Audu. She is the Executive Director of Women and Children's Rights and Empowerment Foundation. Mariam Mara Abdul is a British-trained lawyer with over 15 years of experience in human rights activism and legal practice. She works in the areas of women's human rights advocacy and has served on several advisory and steering committees, including the Nigerian Feminist Forum, Masawa Global Vision, and Bobob for Women's Human Rights. She has worked in Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center, Interfaith Mediation Center, Karuna Center for Peace Building, to name a few. And she has consulted for various organizations, including the Center for Peace, Democracy, and Development, University of Massachusetts, Boston, the Institute for Integrated Transitions, Barcelona, Spain, FIDA, and UN Women. In 2011, Barrister Audu founded a Women and Children's Rights and Empowerment Foundation, an NGO where she continues to advocate for the welfare and protection of women and children in Nigeria and beyond. Yes, this is the program Insight Today. Do not go anywhere. I'll be here shortly with my guests. Stay tuned. You're welcome back to the program Insight Today on Global Television, and I am being joined by Barrister Mrs. Mariam Mara Abdul. How are you doing, Mariam? Are you here with me on the program? Oh, wow, I can barely hear you. I hope your volume is up so I can hear you. Hi, Mariam. I can barely hear you. I think the volume... I cannot hear you. The volume. Let's quickly go on a break and try and rectify.
Good afternoon. I can hear you now.
All right. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes. Good afternoon.
Oh, hi. Hi, Barrister Mariam Mara Abdul. How are you doing today?
Fine. Thank you.
Thank you for honoring the invitation to be on Insight today. Thank you so much. I know it's a very busy day. Happy International Women's Day to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Same to you as well.
How has it been before we go into it? Now, the theme this year, International Women's Day, Inspire Inclusion. What's your take in it in general?
Yes, generally, the whole clamor for women's rights activism is inclusion. We want to be included in decision making. We want to be included in policy making, in politics, and almost every strata in society would like inclusion. So the basic point of today, this year's theme is inclusion, 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 inclusion.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You know, reading your profile, you've done a lot of things, a lot when it comes to peace building and all of that. I know you work with the vulnerable in the society. I know you had a program yesterday and it's ongoing today. How has that been? How has it been going?
It's been going well. It's part of my life's work to help uplift and empower the vulnerable people in society. Women also form part of the vulnerable in society, unfortunately. And particularly, I've been working with people with disabilities. And it's been very interesting, and I'm quite passionate about it. And everybody seems to be very happy with the work we've been doing, especially today's work.
Now, looking at it critically, inclusion, you know, if you look at it, most women are not included when it comes to decision making in the country. We're very few. And looking at how it is when it comes to making tough decisions, being in governance, being included in governance and all that, do you think women have a bigger role to play when it comes to all of these things, especially when it has to do with decision making? The men feel, like I said, in quote, it's a man's world. It's a man's world. Do you think a man's world has actually covered that whole instance, driving the woman and making her take a step back all the time when it comes to serious issues in our society?
You know, women form half of society. You have men and you have women. So it's almost impossible for a man to make a decision for a woman or vice versa. The point is, you cannot seclude or isolate or drown out the voice of women in society because they constitute half of the society, like I've mentioned. So if you're talking about politics, for instance, there has to be the woman's voice in politics as it affects women and men. If you're talking about health, the health sector, and you're looking at reproductive health rights issues, there are issues that are particular to women's rights issues, women's health issues that women have to be on the table to address. If you're looking at conflict or you're looking at crisis, there are issues that are pertinent to women's issues that only women on the decision-making table can address. So it's very, very crucial that women are included in all these different sectors. If you're looking at education, and then you talk about girls' education, right to education, you kind of understand that the patriarchal structure has made it in such a way that attention is given only to boys. And so you have to have that voice that has to be clear and sound and loud to insist that the importance of girls' education is pertinent. So when you look at different sectors of society, it's almost ridiculous to not have, the voice of a woman at that table.
You know what, Mariam? I saw how the theme, the Women's International Day, the theme in which how you handled it when it came to the program, of course, your NGO, Women and Children's Rights, amazing program. And what shocked me was the visually impaired woman who was teaching individuals how to bake. There was no restriction. Someone that was visually impaired coming together, knowing that let us include her in whatever we do, whatever handiwork. How did you come about that program and using individuals who have one challenge or the other, if I may say that?
I'll start from the premise of vulnerability. We women are seen as vulnerable. And then there's an added vulnerability to being
let me add some. Do you think we're vulnerable? Do you think we are in that?
Well, that's the word that they use to describe women and children. The vulnerable society. I'm not vulnerable, are you?
No, of course not.
We're not vulnerable, but unfortunately, we are called vulnerable. So no problem, we're called the vulnerable. And within the vulnerable class, we have people with disabilities that consider themselves to be extra vulnerable. I personally don't see them as extra vulnerable. Haja Hafsatu, the lady that taught some of my beneficiaries how to bake and how to make fresh juices and how to be independent and to explore their own agency, is somebody who I have great respect for. She's visually impaired, and the organization selected her because she has taught over 50 women, people with disabilities and people without disabilities. She's taught them how to cater. She's taught them how to make gourmet cuisines, and she's taught them so many things. And she's not feeling sorry for herself. She's not saying, oh, it's me, I am visually impaired, and therefore I can't do anything in society.
True.
She didn't. She established a beautiful organization, and she didn't even limit it to herself. She wants everybody on board. Everybody that can pay for her courses pays for the course, whether it's 2 days, 3 days, 1 week, 6 months, 1 year, and learns all that she knows. As she's visually impaired, she bakes on her own, she fries on her own, she kneads the dough on her own, she squeezes the juice, she does everything, and she doesn't feel, less than anybody else. So I have sincere respect for her, and I have sincere respect for all the women, in the world that are struggling to make themselves able to defend for themselves and not depend on others or burden them. So that was the premise of my program for IWD, International Women's Day, today.
That was a very beautiful program. I was really inspired when I saw a lot of women who, in quote, vulnerable women there trying to learn one or two. It was an amazing time, women coming together to lift women. And when we hear inclusion, I think that's where women should come together to lift women so that they can be included. When they say inclusion so that we can have a voice in, it could be in governance, it could be in companies, in entertainment, in whatever policies that have been placed. Women should have a voice. Now, looking at the theme of the 2024 International Women's Day, what do you think, what reflects current challenges or achievements for women globally when it comes to inclusiveness?
Yes, it has always been a challenge. I mean, for decades, for women's inclusivity in different areas in society. Women have always been relegated to the back. They've always been told to do domestic chores, to cook, to clean, and fend for the children. And yes, women are very proud to do that. But you have people who are born to be doctors. I'm a lawyer myself. Some of us are born to do more than stay in the domestic front. Some of us are born to do more than farm or things that are quote unquote culturally acceptable for women. So I believe that this is 2024 and women have been working since industrialization and we've been making a good job of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think why the United Nations selected, this theme is to keep on speaking over and over and over and over about the point that including women
Mm-hmm.
on the forefront is crucial. It's crucial. We have women leaders all over the world. We have Mrs. Sirleaf Johnson. We have all sorts of people that have at least made it clear that women are serious and women can handle issues and they're articulate and they're intelligent. So I think it's time that society kind of drops that cultural or for some societies religious belief that women cannot be more than what culture has set out for them to be. We can be more than that and we can go beyond, you know, what people think women can do.
Now, March 8th is a time where women are being celebrated all over the world as International Women's Day. Do you think it's enough? Do you think we should have this as an everyday celebration? Because women go through a lot when it comes to the home front, when it comes to balance, when it comes to work, when it comes to business, when it comes to husbands, when it comes to children, when it comes to multitasking. Do you think we should be celebrated more often than just March 8th or in the week of March?
I personally don't think celebrating women for the whole year is going to make a difference. I think we need to just do our work and get on with it. To celebrate Mother's Day every day for 1 year will not take away the fact that we carry children for 9 months, or we nurse them for 2 years, or we dress them up, bathe them, brush them, and send them to school, and we're mothers until the day we die. It doesn't take that away. So celebrating, for instance, Mother's Day every day will not take away that role or what we do. In the same way that I don't think the IWD is something that should be celebrated every day for people to know, oh, women exist. We exist, we'll continue to exist, and we'll continue to make a difference if given the opportunity. So for me, 1 day a year is perfect enough. And we just have to get on with it, basically. That's what I think.
Before I put you on the spot, Mariam, I want to ask a question. I asked my guest yesterday, and I said, when you talk about inclusiveness, we feel sometimes the men should put us in whatever they're into when it comes to being a board member, when it comes to being a director, when it comes to key positions that women should be included. That's the inclusiveness we're talking. Is that all? What happens to women lifting women? We've seen this perception whereby men will say the women they have these jealousy, they have this there's this thing, not really ego, but there's this thing that they just prefer themselves. They do not like lifting themselves. There's this perception people perceive about women that they do not have this cooperation when it comes to unity and all of that. That's why most of our mouthpiece that we have, or some of our reps that were in politics, of course, we know about the better edu and all of that, they tend to think about themselves and not the women, but it's just the men that have this consideration. Do you think that's true?
I think that is a patriarchal reorientation that men give in society. The patriarchal structure is such that For instance, I'll give you an instance with female genital mutilation.
Mm-hmm.
Female genital mutilation is something that women practice on women or children. The society, the men have told the women that it's them that are going to mutilate their children. And so everybody says, oh, women are so mean to themselves. And it's a kind of brainwashing, and it's something that happens over time. In the same vein that if I'm a female and my boss is female, everybody always assumes there's going to be this catfighting, this kind of irresponsible stupidity happening in the office. Nobody's doing anything, and they're rivals and they hate each other. It's kind of a reorientation, kind of a, a, a saying that people have, and it's completely demeaning. I feel it's demeaning, and women don't have a head start. They don't have a head start. They have so much baggage that they're coming with. So they expect the best. They want to work with the best. So they scrutinize more, they critique more, they overemphasize hard work, they overemphasize a lot of things. And so everybody from the outside is wondering, why is she so harsh with with the same gender as she is?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not the
Mm-hmm.
case. The case is that we want the best from you because we didn't have a head start that the men have. And society always wants to make women pit women against each other. And I don't think that's the case. So I'm very, very sensitive when it comes to people who say women hate women. I don't think women hate women. I think women just expect some kind of higher decorum or some kind of higher intellectual ability or a standard that they don't really see in men. So I think that's where I tend to keep myself.
Now, talking about inclusiveness, do you think women we pay so much, we sacrifice so much just to keep that balance? Do you think we do, or it's just the way of life, or how we've been built or made?
Women sacrifice a lot. In fact, this afternoon I was telling my colleague, my outreach officer is a man, and I was telling him, you came in 30 minutes late, and I don't understand why you came in 30 minutes late. I have 5 children that I had to prepare meals for school for and prepare breakfast for and physically drive them to the 3 different schools before I came to the office. And I came in half an hour before you. I don't know, what were you doing? So we already have so much that we're doing before we even
Mm-hmm.
get to the office. And
Mm-hmm.
so much is expected of us. And I think that the society has to, take things easy. Take things easy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, Mariam, you with your profile, you've done a lot. I read UN. I saw you, UN. I saw you. You're the ED of Human and Rights, Human and Children's Right, Women and Children's Rights Initiative. You've done a few things. When it comes in 2011, you founded, of course, Women and Children's Rights and Empowerment Foundation. That's the NGO, and you continue to advocate for the welfare and protection of women and children in Nigeria and beyond. You have done so much. Like, I am reading your profile. I don't know if I did justice to it, but seriously, being a trained British lawyer with over 15 years of experience in human rights activism and legal practice, and in the area you worked in areas of women's human rights advocacy, and you've served in advisory and steering committee, including the Nigerian Feminist Forum, Musawa Global Vision, and Bob for Women's Human Rights. Now tell me, how did you manage to stay afloat, to juggle all of these things when it comes to work, when it comes to family, when it comes to, all of these things? How did you manage?
I believe as women, like I've mentioned, you have to keep your head above board. You have to have a good head on your shoulders, and you have to have passion for what you're doing. If you're driven by money, you will never get all the money in the world. When you get there, you want more. So you have to focus on the changes you want to make. You have to focus on the lives of people you want to change. And you have to focus not only on your family, but on yourself. And then you have to have a good support structure. Once you have all these things, very crucial keys to each door, I believe that you can get to where you're going. So, I advise people most of the time that
We are multitaskers, women, naturally. God created us in that way. Every single position that we have, we fit right into it and we put ourselves into it. And it's something men don't actually have. A man is driven by one thing sometimes and he focuses on that. When he finishes that task, he goes on to the other task. And there are people who finish. Naturally, they want to see things through. Not that women don't want to see things through, but we see all of them through at the same time. So we are amazing creatures. And once you have that kind of instinct, because women's instinct is quite unique, once you have that instinct and passion and hard work, I think those are the three key things that have kept me going 21 years this year in women's human rights activism.
Wow.
And I'm grateful to God for everything.
What's your perception about people that say that women belong in the kitchen? When men are talking, women should not be found there. They should be in the kitchen or in the bedroom, sitting down, giving them that space or privacy. How would you relate that to inclusion? Not forgetting that, remember, we're Africans. We have traditions, we have morals, we have laws, which are very important, and we have to follow. What's your take on when they are men, women should be in the kitchen, or women should excuse the men at that point?
Yeah, my take is that not everybody is meant to be in an office. Not everybody is meant to finish school. Everybody has his own destiny or her own destiny. So Mrs. X's destiny may be to be a homemaker. I call them homemakers. You make children, you stay with them, you stay at home, and you don't have to work. You can find some other vocational skills to keep you occupied. You can do fashion designing, interior decorating. Every single thing a woman does is her choice, I hope. Once it's not her choice and it's something under duress and it's something forced, that's a different issue. But once it's her choice, I respect that. Not everybody is supposed to be an advocate for women, or supposed to be a medical doctor, or is supposed to be some engineer. Everybody has his or her own destiny. Secondly, women must not be in the house. I mean, it's not written in any 10 or 11th commandment anywhere, or it's not written in any biblical or Quranic, book. If you so choose, you follow the rules of being at home. Not that when your husband comes in, you drop to the floor and you start crawling around because your quote-unquote Messiah has come home. No. There has to be a balance. The most important thing is there has to be a balance. You cannot be disrespectful to your children or to your husband and not prepare meals or do what you're supposed to do. That is bordering on irresponsibility. So there has to be balance. You go to the office, you close, you attend to your family. If anything happens in between, you attend to your family. Family comes first. So you just have to know how to balance things. And men have to understand that women are not just supposed to be seen and not heard. There has to be some kind of consultation, even within the home. There has to be some kind of understanding between one another. And I think that's the key to the success of healthy families.
Okay, thank you. And now, in what ways does this inclusiveness, aim to promote gender equality and women's empowerment?
Oh, it's almost a done deal. It's something that without inclusivity, it can't, many things cannot function, like I've mentioned. The way forward is to include women in all facets of decision making and in all facets of all structures, all ministries, for instance. I think women need to be heard because their voices are different from that of their male counterparts. So it's just inclusion is just something that we can't actually do without. So it's just a reiteration. It goes without saying, but it's just a reiteration of inclusivity being very, very fundamental.
Okay. All right, Mrs. Mariam Mara Abdul. Let's quickly go on a quick break, and then you will rejoin, and the discussion will definitely continue. It's Insight Today on Global Television. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. You're welcome back. And if you're just tuning in, this is Insight Today on Global Television. And like I said, happy International Women's Day to every woman, the girl child out there. Yes, we are promoting, celebrating women when it comes to in different parastatals, whether it's entertainment, in media, medical, when it comes to governance, when it comes to academics, everything encompassed when it comes to the woman and how important the woman is when it comes to being included in decision making, being included in every aspect, being included when the men are standing also. Now, of course, I am joined by Barrister Mrs. Mariam Marwa Abdul, and she's throwing in more light on how to promote women, this celebrate women. Women should be celebrated. It's very important. And of course, like I said, she runs an NGO that has done extremely well in promoting women who are vulnerable, like the visually impaired individuals. An amazing program. You know, we see women running, being excited, but there are some out there who are vulnerable, like the visually impaired, like the ones that find it hard to, they are disabled, some that needs that support, showing them that, yes, whatever is ongoing, you are part of us. We love you as a woman. And of course, is Mrs. Barrister Mrs. Mariam Mara Abdul. Are you here with me right now?
Yes, I am.
It never gets old when you say happy International Women's Day. It never gets old when you celebrate the same gender. It never gets old. So now,
I
what
agree with
ways?
you.
What did you say?
I said I do agree. It doesn't.
It doesn't get old at all. Now, looking at it critically, you know, like I keep going back to the NGO, your NGO, what you did. You know, I have seen where women take up plaques and say, a woman is beautiful, celebrate women, I'm a woman, I'm proud, and all of that. But taking out time and meeting the vulnerable, that empowerment, giving back as a woman to fellow women and individuals, promoting the girl child, being that voice. I really need to, what motivated you? What was your motivation?
I think I was born this way.
Oh.
I've always tended to um, have compassion for people that are less than me or people I perceive to be less than me in terms of the agency. And when I talk about agency, I talk about their independence and their ability to speak up for themselves. I feel that I've always been, to some extent, compassionate towards people. I was always shy growing up, but along the way, I developed this kind of ability to defend people from bullying. And bullying is the world bullying women, for instance, and feeling that they are less than. And so it's on that premise that I have been working steadily to advocate against people that are less than me in regards to that. So apart from working with people, vulnerable people, we work for people who have been violated against, for instance, sexually molested people, people that have different forms of gender-based violence meted against them, whether children or women. We also work with men that have been beaten as well by women. It happens. We deal with custody issues, inheritance issues, marital issues, and a whole slew of issues that pertain to women's rights issues. So once you have that passion and understanding and commitment to helping people that are less than you, I'm not saying less privileged, less than you in terms of their agency specifically, that's the premise that I come from.
Now, how does this theme, inclusiveness, resonate with issues faced by women in different parts of the world? You mentioned a few: gender-based violence, you know, being, you know, not giving the right privilege for out of school children who are, in quote, mostly girls who get married at a very early age. Now, how does this theme, how will it resonate with these issues faced with women and the girl child in various parts?
Yes, it's quite disheartening if you look at countries like Afghanistan, that the Taliban, since the 80s, have restricted education for women. I mean, Malala was shot on a bus going to school because she was a girl, and the Taliban um, who didn't want her to go to school. So you can imagine structures like that that keep that kind of person, who she ended up being, um, relegating her to the back. It's a good example of a system that does not even regard women in terms of having some kind of voice. And then you can come to places like the northern part of Nigeria, where more emphasis is laid on early marriage, forced marriage, and girls not going to school. So those kinds of cultures, they really break my heart because I have three daughters, and I can't imagine how relegating a child or keeping a child out of school can help society. I tend not to understand or agree with that. I can't. Um, I have nothing against a child getting married over the age of majority, which is 18. Then that is not a child legally. But I have a lot of issues with the child getting married below 18 years old and maybe 10 or 9 years old. Is very heartbreaking because the child is a child and does not know anything. And some of our structures and some of our cultures are pro relegating girl children to the back and not educating them. So your question about how does it affect women globally and children
Yes.
globally, a very apt question. And it's something that is happening and will continue to happen unless something very strong takes place. You have uh, the Child's Rights Act. Sorry, pardon me. You have the Child's Rights Act that's against it. You have the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria that is against that says in chapter 4 that all there's a right to education. You have the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. You have the Africa Charter on Human and People's Rights. You have the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women that include educating women. You have the Protocol on women's rights. So you have all these international instruments, and I've mentioned even our constitution that say there's the right to education. They didn't specifically say male or women or girls or boys. They said every single human being has that right. So for somebody to sit down in some community and say that girls don't have that right is very, very disheartening, and it's something that we really, really need to be very vocal about. So IWD Day today is talking about inclusion. Include them, include them, include them in every single aspect of life.
Well said, well said. Now, how can individuals, organizations, international organizations, when it comes to companies, people, the elites, contribute to the promoting of this year's International Women's Day? How can we all come together, all hands on deck?
Yes. For instance, what you're doing as a journalist, because journalists are, for me, on the Richter scale of 1 to 10, journalists form like number 9. Because if a journalist gets up today, all journalists in the world say that that the sky is black. Everybody will read the newspapers, read all the social media handles and say, oh, that's true. The sky is black. The media has a very, very strong presence. And everywhere you are, somebody's either listening to the radio or, looking at their phone. So what you're doing today is advocating for inclusion. You are speaking to me and I'm talking to other people, and you're getting the ripple effect of what you're doing. So one important thing is media's role in gender sensitive reporting. So you're doing
True.
gender sensitive reporting and it's having the ripple effect. Secondly, I think in every single part of society, we have organizations that have corporate responsibility, and they can have programs that sensitize people about including women, in decision making, or including women in health sector or whatever sector it is, and shedding more light on all these issues. So everybody can have all hands on deck while talking about gender inclusion, gender mainstreaming. It's everybody's duty, because I think everybody was born of a woman the last time I checked.
Yes, absolutely correct. Now let's look at gender equality and women's empowerment, and look at the theme 2024 inclusion. How can we marry all of these things together for the greater good when it comes to promoting women and, of course, International Women's Day?
Yes, we can all synergize. You know, synergy has never killed anyone. When you ask questions and you work hand in hand, because what you're doing, I can't do, and what I'm doing, you cannot do.
Very true.
So once you have synergy with everybody, there's nobody that has all the knowledge in the world. So synergize, work together, unify, and plow through, push forward.
Now, looking at this theme, inclusiveness, and of course, today, March 8th, do you think women so far are doing justice to this day, 8th of March, to celebrate women, you and I, and of course, the girl child? Do you think we've done enough from where we are coming from? Every March 8th, there's always a theme that comes in, you know, celebrating women, different themes from last year, the year before that, and now this year, inclusiveness. Do you think it has done justice to the International Women's Day, giving it this particular theme?
Yes, I believe that everybody is doing their best. I don't think there's some kind of way to measure what best is. But I think the best practice is what we're doing, which is acknowledging the International Women's Day that started off as a movement um, earlier in the century. And I think we're doing justice to the founders of the IWD. And there's no limit to what best anybody can do. You can only do your own best within your own capacity and within your own limitations. So I do think that we're doing justice.
Now, looking at the theme, inclusiveness, some women are, will I say, gradually understanding what it means to be included in decision making, standing up for other women, being that voice. When it comes to, you mentioned the women leader and all of that, do you think women are working in sync with one another to ensure that we have that voice when it comes to making decisions in politics, democracy, organizations, media, entertainment, when it comes to health? Women are actually making waves at this point, understanding what it means to have a voice as a female individual in the midst of the male-dominated world that we find ourselves in.
Yes, I do believe that women are making grand strides, because you can imagine somebody drowning in an ocean of water, and the waves representing the male-dominated aspect of society. And you see the woman floating above board and is still swimming through with the currents and the breeze, and all that is actually a reflection of society, is the metaphor I use. And to her own capacity, she gets to the shore, and then she starts working or whatever it is she's doing. I take my hat off to such people. And I do think that there's space for more to be done. But to the best of my thinking, I think women are doing pretty good.
Okay. Now, in what ways can we ensure that the momentum around the theme continues beyond International Women's Day? Inclusiveness, including the women, not just for today, not empowering women today or giving that motivation today. How can we do it now and, of course, beyond this particular day, March 8th?
I think including government in everything we're doing. Every society is governed by a set of people who own the land that we live on. So we cannot work in isolation as activists or as journalists or as any person. You need to partner with government so that government implements, what you're doing. So I think it's very, very key with everything we're doing to keep the momentum going, to keep the partnership alive, and to continue to steer the boat forward. you need to include government in everything that you're doing. So if you want women to be in decision making positions, you start from local government level, in inclusivity and so on and so forth. You have to have, to some extent, some kind of partnership or some kind of cooperation between you and, for instance, local government, and then you start at state level and go to federal. If you want something implemented, you notice that if you want policy or some kind of act, you go to the National Houses of Assembly and they treat it. So you have to keep advocating, keep sensitizing, and keep pushing through on inclusion in all the areas of gender mainstreaming you want, and partner with them, and they will implement it for you. And that's how it works everywhere in the world. So I think I try to speak to government officials in different capacities and express that, in terms of inclusion and in terms of keeping the ball rolling, we need you on board. We need you to understand, and we need you to be our mouthpieces beyond what we
Of
can do,
course.
because we have a limit and they don't.
Of course, of course. I'm going to put you on the spot again, Barrister Mrs. Mariam Marwa Abdul. I know you're the founder, the Executive Director, Women and Children's Rights and Empowerment Foundation, the NGA. What has been your challenges so far?
The biggest challenges with non-governmental organizations, as my CSO friends would say, is funding. Funding is always is a number one challenge, because getting funding is very, very difficult, because they scrutinize what you're doing. You have so much to account for. So it goes beyond your passion. It's more about what you've been doing, how many lives you've touched, how you affect your beneficiaries, and so on and so forth. So that's that. Another challenge is, security issues in the country. You want to go deep, 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 deep down into certain places in society, and it's difficult for you, because if you've heard about the kidnapping here in Kaduna State, I have a close relationship with many schools in Kaduna State, where we sensitize them on girl-child education, desensitize them on early marriage, forced marriage, female genital mutilation, and all sorts of things, sexual gender-based violence issues. And it makes my work difficult, because I don't know if that's the day I go that they'll kidnap me as well. So these are the challenges that we have in certain places, whether it's Maiduguri, Northeast, or here in Kaduna, is something that's a problem for us. And then again, funders are frightened, to come down to this level and implement or evaluate their programs that we're carrying out. So I think these two crucial things they hamper on what we do down here. But we're resilient. We have the passion and we have the zeal to continue with what we're doing. And inshallah, we'll continue and make the most of it.
By the grace of God. Now, when they say women are very difficult to work with, and I know you're into gender-based violence, you work with a lot of women in all walks of life. It doesn't matter where they find themselves. Has it been difficult working with women and, of course, the girl child?
I don't think that it's difficult working with women. I think that they're just too straightforward and too centered. And so everybody feels they're difficult. Everywhere has its challenges. Working with a male boss or a male colleague can lead to harassment, whether verbal or whether sexual. So it has its own issues. If you're a student in university, you have sex for grades. So every single place has its own specific problem. So people run away from working with men. Some people, their spouses don't even want you to work in an institution that is male dominated, for fear of sexual gender-based violence and workplace harassment and verbal insults and things like that. And then again, some people don't want to work with women because of what you've mentioned. They feel that they're too difficult to work with or too problematic. So whatever tickles your pickle, as they say, whatever you feel is right for you is where you should go. I think people should stop. It's semantics for me. I think we should focus on what we want to do, focus on the impact we want to make, focus on the policies we want to change, and not focus on who you're working for. You could be working for a horse, for all you know. And the important thing is that you're doing what you're meant to be doing at the particular time. So I really don't go into the play on what gender uh, you work for, how they treat you or how they do not treat you, because there's politics everywhere, as we know.
Yes, They are. Now, Barrister Mrs. Mariam Abdul, can you please explain to me, can you tell me, looking at for women that, children that want to be like you, that want to, you have inspired them, can you just tell us one thing, an advice, just one thing?
I would advise people to be honest, hardworking, dedicated, intelligent. Don't do what you don't understand or what you're not skilled to do or something that somebody has put in your lap. Do what is right and focus on what you intend to change. So I would advise anybody that wants to do any kind of vocation or any kind of skill to always have that passion and conviction about what they're doing so that nobody will sway you, like a pendulum. You're always focusing on what is right and what you want to do. I think that's the most critical advice, and try and be honest and trustworthy.
I like the part you said, try and be honest and trustworthy. Thank you so much for being a part of Insight today. And yes, Barrister Mrs. Mariam Marwa Abdul is the Executive Director of Women and Children's Rights and Empowerment Foundation. She is a British trained lawyer with over 15 years of experience in human rights activism and legal practice. She works in areas of women's human rights advocacy and has served on several advisory and steering committees, including the Nigerian Feminist Forum, Musawa Global Vision, and Bobab for Women's Human Rights. She has worked with women in Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center, Interfaith Mediation Center, Karuna Center for Peace Building, to name a few, and has consulted for various organizations, including the Center for Peace, Democracy, and Development, University of Massachusetts, Boston, the Institute for Integrated Transition, Barcelona, Spain, FIDA, and UN Women. In 2011, Barrister Abdul founded Women and Children's Rights and Empowerment Foundation, an NGO where she continued to advocate for the welfare and protection of women and children in Nigeria and beyond. What a wonderful portfolio. And I know it's longer than that. Thank you so much for being a part of Insight today. Thank you for inspiring us, and happy International Women's Day to you. Thank you.
Same to you, and thank you for having me.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, that's it on the program Insight today. Thank you all for being a part of it. To all the women, girl, child out there, happy International Women's Day to each and every one of us. And I am Jumai Manson.